Hey, Dr. Lisa here, and I'm about to share with you the first part of a two-part video series that's completely free so you can learn more about Zone 2 running and help you set up Zone 2 running. This first part that I'm about to share with you is a presentation so you can learn the benefits of Zone 2 running. Then if you're interested, click the link below for the second part so you can set up your individual Zone 2 range. I know for me, Zone 2 running was something I'd heard about for a while, and then I eventually made that leap and committed to Zone 2 running for a couple months, and I had an entire breakthrough year last year with my running. I was able to run my first marathon. I took 8 minutes off my marathon time that I was expecting to finish at, and I PR'd a half by 3 minutes. And now I'm training for my second marathon. I hope Zone 2 running can help you too, and I can't wait to help you out. Welcome to part 1 of 2 in this video series on how you can get started with Zone 2 running, and specifically how to set up Zone 2 running. In this video, we're going to go over who Zone 2 running is for, why you should consider running in Zone 2, what the benefits of Zone 2 running are, and then also who Zone 2 is not for. I can still remember last April when I was running the Monument 10K in Richmond, Virginia. I can see Kiera D'Amato running on the opposite side of the street as me as she's leading the pack. Police are leading her to the finish line because it's an up and back race. And I just remember yelling, "Go, Kiera," as I'm huffing and puffing, only 2 miles in. Now, I had trained for this race, but I was not thriving. My pace was slowing down mile after mile. And the worst part was I felt like my heart was going to beat out of my chest, especially as I was finishing the race, the last mile. I knew, though, once I crossed the finish line, that if I ever wanted to run longer distances and get faster, something had to change. That is when I discovered Zone 2 running. I read through the benefits, have heard other runners talk about it, but decided it was something I was going to commit to for 3 months. What's the worst case scenario? My running stayed the same? Well, it hadn't improved in months, so that was okay. Fast forward past many frustrating runs in the beginning, and Zone 2 running allowed me to not only run faster, but it opened up the possibility of distance running that led me to run my first marathon. Now, keep in mind, this is April of 2023. At the beginning of the year, I had not even thought about signing up for a marathon. That was not in my cards. That was not even in my goals for 2023. But as I continued to increase my distance, and I found it to be a lot easier to increase my distance than it had in the past, I was like, okay, maybe I should challenge myself with a marathon. And the icing on the cake, though, the thing that really, really stuck with me was that with Zone 2 running, I was able to really enjoy my runs. So when I was training for this marathon, I enjoyed all my runs, and I want that for you too. Now, before you get started with your first Zone 2 run, let's go over the benefits. Zone 2 running can be frustrating, and I think it can be more difficult than any speed workout or even long run. I think it's important to remind yourself the why behind these runs when it gets tough. But Zone 2 running is not for everyone. It's specifically not for beginner runners, those training for a race, and those who obsess over numbers. The beginner runners, if you've been running less than a year, I really just encourage you to keep running and keep staying consistent with it. You don't need to necessarily focus on the logistics and the data just yet. So just keep running, keep staying consistent with it, and adding in some strength training. If you're training for a race, I want you to focus on training for a race. I don't want you to necessarily focus on Zone 2 and training for a race, especially if you've never run in Zone 2 before. I think it's a lot more important to have time to build your base with Zone 2 pre-training before you bring Zone 2 into your training plan. So if this is you, then I highly recommend that you run your quote easier runs based on the RPE scale. This is the rate of perceived exertion scale, and it's from 1 to 10. 10 is a full-on sprint. 1 would be you're just walking around your house, you're walking to the bathroom, etc. So your easy run should be about 3 or 4 out of 10. So this can allow you to feel and be more in tune with what an easy run feels like when you start to put a number on the different paces and intensities of your run. I also don't think it's for those who obsess over numbers. If you're type A, that's one thing, but if you are someone who constantly feels like they have to maybe look at their watch or, it's kind of just taking the joy out of running, then I don't think zone 2 running is necessarily for you. I do recommend you continue to run with the RPE scale. I know for me, I'm like borderline type A, type B because when I was running in zone 2, I would glance at my watch, every couple minutes. And as I got better at it, it was like, maybe once a run just to make sure I was on track. But it's not something to where you should just be staring at your watch to make sure you're in zone 2 the entire run. That is not fun. Let's face it, that is not fun. You don't want to get too caught up in the numbers. It's more so just to guide you. But zone 2 running can be super beneficial. It's for the runner who has trouble identifying and understanding their easy pace because now we are putting guardrails on where exactly your easy pace should be. It's maybe also for the runner whose heart rate spikes to 170 or 180 during a quote easy run. This was me. Both of these were me actually because I had COVID and my side effects of COVID, my long-term side effects for COVID, where that my heart rate would just spike every run. It didn't matter if it was a faster run, it didn't matter if I was trying to run at an easy pace. It was always spiking. So that's why I decided I really needed to get my heart under control and train my heart. There is some controversy about if you should run in conversational pace as your easy run or zone 2. What's the difference? I think it depends on the runner. People are going to interpret conversational pace a lot different person to person. I know for me, even last year, I thought conversational pace was just I can spit out a couple words, maybe a sentence, and if I can do that, I'm at a good pace. But realistically, and my heart rate was still high when I was doing that. I was still running way too fast for my easier runs, but ideally if you are trying to stay in conversational pace and you're really trying to find like where is your easy pace at, conversational pace means if I asked you like tell me about your time in college, you could give me 4 to 5 sentences without huffing and puffing, without feeling like you're gasping for air. So conversational pace really means like you can talk in sentences without gasping for air. Now that will help you learn to slow down. So if you feel like, maybe the RPE scale is not for you, maybe zone 2 is not for you, and you just want to go off conversational pace, that is completely fine. But make sure that you are slowing down enough and you're being honest with yourself. That's the one thing about conversational pace and the RPE scale. Just define your easy pace is you have to be really, really honest with yourself if you are going at a quote slow enough pace. And that's where I was like, I am not being honest with myself. I need these guardrails or these bumpers to tell me if I'm going too fast or too slow. And I wanted to improve my heart and the function of my heart after COVID. So, what is zone 2? In the picture on the left, you can see there are 5 heart rate zones. Zone 1 is in gray, zone 5 is in red, zone 2 is in blue. So, it's 1 through 5. 5 is the highest, 1 is the lowest, and zone 2 is in blue. You can see that it is 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. The first step to figuring out zone 2 and your zone 2 range is by calculating your heart rate max. The main goal of running in zone 2 is to build your aerobic endurance. So, zone 2 running, what makes this different than maybe an easy pace, a conversational pace, is that you know when you're running in zone 2 and you know when you're not running in zone 2. And when you're running in zone 2, you're going to be training in about 85 to 89% of your lactate threshold. Now, this is important because you haven't necessarily crossed into that anaerobic endurance. So when you're in zone 2, you're building aerobic endurance. Your heart rate hasn't climbed enough to cross into that anaerobic endurance at this pace. So over time, this will increase your lactate threshold by improving the amount of mitochondria and the efficiency of your mitochondria. We'll go into that in a second, but really what this means is as you increase your pace and your heart rate, less lactic acid will build up in your muscles during a harder workout, which means you won't be as tired. You have trained your mitochondria, they're working efficiently, and they can use lactate and can even use it as fuel. So it's no longer working against your body, it is now working with your body. The benefits of zone 2, you can increase the number of mitochondria. Maybe you remember that word from science class growing up, but it's the powerhouse of the cell. So if you really think about that, we are talking about this on a cellular level, which means this is going to take time. It's also going to increase the flexibility of your mitochondria so you can efficiently transport that lactate. You'll have a lower resting heart rate because your heart is working more efficient. You are training your heart now. And you'll have faster recovery because not every run is going to be an all out, hard as you can run. You'll also increase your fat metabolism because fat is going to be your fuel source in zone 2. Once you cross into zone 3, 4, and 5, that's when you're hitting glucose as your fuel. Side note, this does not change your fueling strategy if you should fuel with fat or glucose. Keep your fueling strategy the same. It will also help to decrease your injury rate because the intensity of your runs plays a very big factor in your injury rate. So when you decrease the overall intensity of your runs for a majority of your runs, you also decrease your risk for injury. You also decrease your risk for diabetes because, again, with the glucose thing, that's not my scope. I'm just going to put that out there. And you'll also be able to run faster because you are not using all of your energy up with every single run. You're able to conserve some of your energy. You're using a different energy source. So when it's actually time to increase your speed, maybe you're doing a speed workout, you'll have that energy and you'll be able to execute it. Before we dive into the equations, though, let's talk about the accuracy of your running watch and a heart rate monitor. When you look at the research for the running watch, it's pretty darn inaccurate. It's inaccurate across the board with, which brand of watch you're using, and that's to be expected because your running watch is on your wrist. Ideally, you want to take your heart rate like at your chest because it's going to be a lot more accurate and it's going to be real time accurate versus a little bit more delayed on your running watch. Our running watch is not 100% accurate with our pace, our cadence, our speed, so therefore it's not going to be 100% accurate with our heart rate. They did find that it's more accurate at rest or a low level exercise like zone 2, and it's less accurate as you increase your pace or your intensity. It can also be 25% off, not a coupon. That's how inaccurate it can be, depending on the brand and version of your watch. They actually found that the Apple Watch is the most accurate watch, and that's the one I used. And again, I knew it wasn't going to be 100% accurate, but I was okay with that because I wanted an idea of where I was at. I didn't need the exact number. So that is the next video. We're going to talk about how you can calculate your zone 2 ranges and your heart rate max. Understand that this is the second option. Ideally, in a perfect world, we're going to a lab, we're getting our max heart rate done and calculated with this lab or inside this lab as we're running. We're also getting our zone 2 ranges calculated in this lab, but that's just not, that's not accessible to everyone. And it's also not necessary, especially if you're okay with it being like, I just want to be somewhere around zone 2 versus it needs to be in zone 2 every second of this run. So I will see you in the second video. We're going to calculate our heart rate max and we're going to calculate our zone 2 ranges. See you soon.